All right, today we're going to dive into something that might just challenge the way you see everything. It's called the thinking matrix, a concept from Life Chunyuan's Shufeng that really gets you to question the very nature of your own thoughts. So let's just jump right in with a question that seems almost silly. Can 1 plus 1 equal 3? I know. Every part of your brain is probably screaming, no, it's 2. But hang with me for a second. Let's just put that certainty on hold. Because according to the work we're exploring today, the answer has nothing to do with math. It has everything to do with the boundaries of our thinking. That automatic no is actually a symptom of a particular way of thinking, and figuring out how to get past that, well, that's the key to this whole thing. And that brings us to our first big idea here, the invisible walls. The thing is, we're all living inside a kind of mental box. It's made up of all the rules and assumptions we take for granted. And the really tricky part? Most of us don't even know the walls are there. You know, history is filled with these amazing clues about how to think outside that box. You've got stories like Cao Cheng, a kid in ancient China who figured out how to weigh a massive elephant using a boat and a pile of stones. Or think about Archimedes, shouting Eureka in his bathtub when he solved the gold crown problem. Even a tiny ant on a Mobius strip, it can get to what looks like the other side without ever crossing an edge. These aren't just cool party tricks. They're perfect examples of what happens when you break free from standard logic to solve something that seems totally impossible. So, what are we really talking about when we say thinking? Well, this source material defines thinking, or Seaway, as the dimension and the actual process of thought itself. This goes way beyond just being smart. It's about the scope, the depth of your consciousness, your ability to see the big picture, to reason, and to find solutions that live outside the normal rules. And this leads us to the core of this whole explainer. The author, Xu Feng, proposes this incredible model. Think of it like a ladder of thought. It's a hierarchy of consciousness with 8 distinct levels, each one more sophisticated than the last. So here they are. You've got the first 4 levels: material, image, associative, and illusory thinking. These are all pretty grounded in the physical world and what we can see and touch. But then you get to the higher levels: visualization, taiji, formless, and finally, chaos thinking. These move into a much more abstract, holistic, even non-linear way of understanding the world. Each step up this ladder is a huge leap into a more expansive state of being. And this chart really puts it into perspective. The source suggests that this ladder is basically what separates different kinds of life. Animals, for instance, operate down at the lower levels. We humans are kind of stuck in the middle. And then you have what the text calls immortals, or gods, who function at those top tiers. The one thing that separates them all, it's the quality, the dimension of their thought. So the most important takeaway here is this deep, fundamental link between the dimension a being exists in and how they think. You know, a two-dimensional being would think in purely 2D terms. We're 3D beings, so our thinking is more complex. It only makes sense then that a being in a higher dimension would just naturally have a more advanced, more liberated kind of consciousness. Okay, so what does any of this have to do with our daily lives? Well, this is where we get into what the source calls the human matrix. And this is where the theory becomes deeply, deeply personal and might just explain why our specific spot on that ladder can be a source of so much pain and frustration. This quote from Zufeng is, well, it's incredibly blunt. It says, "Immortals observe humans and feel, how are they so stupid? For thousands of years, humanity has struggled painfully in the program of marriage and family. Why not change the way of life?" Wow, so from that higher perspective, our biggest struggles, our most deeply ingrained problems, they just look like these self-imposed programs that we keep running over and over again for no good reason. So what is this program? It's defined as the thinking matrix, or Siwei Zhen. Think of it as a system that sort of locks every life form into its specific level of thought. Now, the source suggests this is what creates order in the universe, which is fine. But for us as individuals, it also creates this profound sense of limitation. It's like an invisible prison, and the walls are built out of our own thought patterns. And you can really see the stark contrast here. On the one hand, you have human thinking, which is trapped in these programs. We experience suffering, we see problems as brick walls, and we feel totally bound by the physical world. But then you have this immortal thinking, which sees beyond the programs, experiences freedom, sees infinite solutions to every problem, and truly understands that consciousness is what creates reality.
Okay, so if we're all operating inside this matrix, the next logical question is a big one. How do we get out? And that brings us to our final section, what the source calls the keys to ascension. This is basically the user's manual for leveling up your own thinking.
Now, here's the crucial insights, and it's a real paradigm shift. You don't escape the matrix by fighting it or trying to break down the walls. It doesn't work that way. The only way out is up. It's about consciously evolving your thinking so you can start operating on the next level.
And this is the roadmap. The text lays out 8, let's call them philosophical steps for making that climb. First, truly understand that life is eternal and let go of the fear of death. Second, start seeing your own life as a role you're playing, which helps you detach. Third, actively try to imitate the thinking patterns of higher beings. Fourth, get really good at visualizing beauty. Fifth, free yourself from the grip of raw desire and emotion. Sixth, just stop comparing yourself to other people. Seventh, realize that all physical things are really just illusions. And finally, number 8, follow your true, authentic, original nature.
And that brings us full circle, doesn't it? This entire framework, this whole ladder of consciousness, it all boils down to one incredibly powerful idea. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. If your thoughts really do create your reality, what reality are you going to create next?